Hey, everybody. I'm Austin Cole.
I'm Mike Flannery.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Real Talks, where Mike and I discuss real estate, asset accumulation, and lending. So we actually just did a little bit of a broadcast, and it was brought to our attention. Thanks for the interaction, guys. We appreciate the comments. We had a little issue with Mike's microphone, so it's take two on the live stream. I'll tell you, before we get started, guys, it's pretty tough to do these live streams. I mean, there's a lot going on with the computers and everything here, and I understand why it's such a difficult thing. So we're going to get better and better as we continue to do this, but it really is our goal. You know, as you said too, Mike, it's our goal to bring high-quality content to everybody. So we want to make sure that we're doing that, and we're not going to give up. We're going to keep trying. We're going to get this right every time. All right?
True statement. We got a good topic.
Really good episode. Yeah, go ahead and introduce it, Mike, actually.
Yeah, so the question we wanted to pose and bring to you guys was a question that we get asked quite often, and then based on our last week's episode, you know, a lot of people brought it to our attention, and I think it's a good point. So the question is, with the inflated prices in the housing market, at least in our area, but it truthfully is across the country, right? With those inflated prices, you know, should home buyers be worried about the property that they're buying maintaining its value? And so when we get in situations like we're in now, where prices start to get, you know, on the increase and buyer demand is a lot higher, we want to make sure that, you know, that we can bring you some statistics, you know, from the past to show that the overall housing market, you know, tends to move upward in terms of value. And there are slight dips, you know, and I think we've got a good, for those of you that are actually viewing this live, we've got a good visual for you. There's a chart that Austin will go over, but I'm going to let Austin talk about it. You know, him being a realtor and going inside of the homes and working with buyers on trying to, you know, get an offer accepted and competing with others. I think it's important to have you share some insight on what you've seen, and then also we'll go back to, you know, a few years back and just kind of talk about it. So
yeah, guys. So, you know, it's a big thing, and we're getting asked about this constantly because it's very obvious, of course, to all of us at this point that we have been in an uptrending market for a while, and we're still in an uptrending market. So as these prices rise and rise and rise, I think it's just natural for people to sort of have this reaction of, hey, when is it going to pop? And I think it's maybe ingrained in us, you know, as millennials. If there's young millennials or young adults watching this or listening to this, I think it's particularly I guess, in our hearts, because we, as teenagers, went through that recession. We watched our families and our parents go through that whole bubble that happened in like the 2008 time. Absolutely. Where a lot of people lost a lot of money. There was some serious economic turmoil, and I think, you know, we're sort of trained, I guess you could say, where we say, hey, it almost looks like the same thing's happening again. When's it going to pop, right? But, you know, to answer the question, you know, how risky is it really? I mean, is it really that bad? I think it's a lot less risky than what a lot of people may think. And here's what it really boils down to. It boils down to how long you plan on holding on to your assets. And this applies to a lot of things that are like appreciating assets, you know, good like Fortune 500 stocks and things like that have a very similar trend to them. Basically, here, let me pull up this chart. So if you guys are watching on the screen, you should be able to see this. I'll put it at the bottom of the screen here. This is a chart that I got from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. They did some economic research here, and this shows us what the median sale prices of homes in the United States have been. I think the chart goes all the way back to 1965. And for those that are watching, you can see this, but for those that are listening, I'll just tell you, it's basically a constant uptrend. It's just a constant uptrend. It's got its little peaks and its valleys. You know, obviously nothing is going to be a straight line. Prices will come up and kind of come down. But when you look at it over a period of years, it's always in an uptrend, Mike.
Yeah, and I think it's important just to note, you know, what happened in 2008. There was a lot of statistics and things that started to show like as early as 2005. So it wasn't like, you know, everything was on the uptick and all of a sudden it was just a sudden crash, right? There was data and pieces that came out as early as 2005 that kind of led into that crash. And so, you know, yeah, you know, our parents and the older generation, as you know, for us, we were, you know, 15 years old in 2008. So, you know, I think it's important to note that a lot of people did lose their homes, right? And a lot of people couldn't make the payment. And a lot of that attributed to the fact that they bought at, you know, X, and when they went to get rid of the asset or to sell the asset, the value wasn't there. And that's when you become underwater on your mortgage or on any asset when you have more into it than what it's worth. And so that's never what we want to see happen. And that's why the timing is so awesome. So we'll have Austin kind of share a little bit of this data going back to the past, and then we'll kind of give our opinion on what's happening now. And I think that'll answer the question.
Yeah, so here's basically what it is, guys. I like to run it as like a worst case scenario, right? So here's what this chart says. For those that are looking, you might be able to see it, but I'll just go over the sort of the key points here. So in Q1 of 2007, right before the crash happened, that was when values were at an absolute peak. So we were at $257,000 as a median price average across the United States, right? And then by Q1 of 2009, so it took 2 years to get there, by the way, we were all the way down to 208,000 as the median price. So it was about a 20% drop. So the absolute worst case scenario, the most unlucky people, what happened was they bought in Q1 of 2007 and then sold in Q1 of 2009. So a 20% loss in their asset would have been like the worst, right? And then I always like to say, okay, so let's assume that you were maybe somebody that was unlucky, because we couldn't necessarily predict it 100% that this was going to happen. I mean, there was a lot of people that were buying in 2007 thinking things were going to continue to go up, right? Let's say you were somebody that bought at that absolute peak in 2007. The question then would be, all right, how long would it take if I were to ride through that entire downtrend and wait for things to come back up? Because we know it will come back up. That is a guarantee. Unless the world ends, it's going to continue appreciating at some point. How long would it take to get back to where we were at? And that answer is about 6 years. So in Q1 of 2007, we were at the all-time high of 257,000 as a median. By Q1 of 2013, we were all the way back there again. So I guess just a short answer on that question would be, if you were in the absolute worst case scenario where you bought at the absolute peak, how long would you have to wait to get back to where your property was? And this was one of the worst recessions ever, and it took 6 years.
Right, and going into what we think now, you know, if you look at that 2013 number of 257 and you bring it to Q4 of 2020, I'll just tell you, the number in 2013 was 257, and we're talking median, value throughout the country, right? To Q4 of 2020, it comes in at 346,000. So if you were someone that bought at the worst time in 2007 and just said, no matter what the market does, this is our forever home, whatever, we're going to be here for the foreseeable future. You basically skip over all those hard times and you just arrive at Q4 of 2020, and it's almost $100,000 difference in the correct direction.
Right.
That's pretty incredible.
And you were saying, so Q1 of 2013 was 257, but that's the same number as Q1 of 2007.
Right. So you kind of rode the wave, and now we're up.
Yep. So if you bought in 2007, during that little time period, like in 2009, 2010, when things were really down, I think a lot of people were kicking themselves saying, geez, I bought at the top of the market. I really made a mistake here. I'm losing money. But for those that were able to stomach that roller coaster, just like you said, you sort of skip over those hard times. For those that stomached it and held the property, 13 years later, here we are.
Not a problem.
You're basically up $100,000 if you bought at that median, right?
And just think of it this way, guys. Let's just say that you did buy a house in 2007, okay? And let's just say you paid $257,000, the exact median for the country. If you're not looking to sell, or you don't have a realtor like Austin come into the house and do a market analysis to give you a value of the property, you probably don't even know that the value is down, right?
Yeah.
You might see other statistics. Obviously, the economic performance during those times was pretty bad, and that's just putting it lightly. But unless you have somebody like Austin, or somebody come in to value the property, you're not going to have this shell shock like, whoa, my property value is really, really down, and I'm sitting here concerned about it. Unless you have to move or sell, you just would have never had the number given to you. And then come 2020, when you come to either refinance or sell and purchase, which we talked about in a previous episode as well, you would have seen the value and just said, wow, what a smart play that was, buying a house.
Right.
Little did you know that was like the worst time to buy short term. And that's why I think it's really important to just talk about when you buy houses. There are individuals that buy houses and flip houses, right? And they improve them and they sell them and make a profit, and that's great. If you're someone that's not interested in doing that, but just interested in getting into a property to then have a 5-6 year house and sell, more likely than not, the asset is going to appreciate, and you're going to see that the purchase that you made and the idea of buying a property, even though right now prices are a little bit higher. If you look at the chart that's on your screen, you can see it's a constant uptick, and you can see that big bump that occurs would be right in that 05 to 09 area. And from 2010 to now, you can see that growth that's accumulated is equal to the amount of growth that's occurred in the last 30 years from like the 70s to 2000. So I mean, we're on a huge uptick right now, and I think it's important to talk about because if you're a home buyer with rates being low, I wouldn't necessarily be sticker shocked, right? Or see the prices of homes going up and then be concerned that the value is not going to be there. I think it's going to continue to see what you see on the chart right there.
So long story short, to answer the question, how risky is it really to be buying during an uptrend? If you have the plan of buying a property and holding on to it for a good amount of time, and the general rule of thumb would be longer than 5 years, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to see appreciation. We ran through this worst case scenario, which it only took 6 years for things to kind of get back to where they were.
In the worst period we've
We're
seen.
not predicting that we're going to have anything. If there is a correction, and that's a big if, because right now this buyer demand and the shortage of inventory is just so wild. I mean, we're not predicting, Mike and I aren't, we've said this many times, we're not predicting any sort of like major crash in the near future. But
No.
if/when there is a correction, there's always going to be corrections. We're smart enough to also know that there will be future economic crises probably throughout our lifetimes. If there is a correction, just remember that the worst case scenario is going to be you'll probably just have to hold on to the asset for a little while. So
And
that's
ultimately, last thing I'll say, going into right now, right? We talked about Q4 of 2020. Going into 2021, a lot of the things that I'm reading are basically backing the fact that the amount of homes sold in 2020 versus the amount of homes sold in 2021, we're going to see upwards of 25% in terms of growth. So this year is going to be a big one, right? We're still seeing it now. We didn't have any sort of break in the wintertime. I know Austin didn't. I know I didn't. We've been consistent with new home buyers, and a lot of them are first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
But we are seeing a good amount of people that are selling their first house they've owned for 3 or 4 years. And obviously those people are cashing in big time because of the way that the prices are now. So in some cases, doing a 3 or 4 year hold and selling and buying something else, sometimes you can make a ton of money doing it. And knock on wood, that's not everybody's situation. But when rates are as low as they are, just to once again reiterate the answer to the question, I don't think it's ultimately that risky, but time will tell.
So really, I mean, the only people that I think should have any sort of concern over this would be people that are planning on maybe buying a property short term, live in it, maybe not even do anything to it, and then sell it maybe within a couple of years. Because obviously we can't predict the future. But those are the only people that I think should really feel like they're taking on any sort of significant risk. Okay,
just look at the chart, and that pretty much. That's a pretty consistent uptick.
Right, and I know we said this before too, which is that when you look at investment portfolios, a lot of people would consider real estate to be one of the least risky and I guess most guaranteed investments that you can make in terms of guaranteeing that you're going to have a solid return in the future, right?
And just one last point I'll make, and then we'll go to our Saturday sampler here, is that if you ever sit down with a financial advisor or anybody that looks at just your assets in total, whether it's cash, whether it's stocks and bonds, whether it's property, whatever the case may be, there is a tool that these individuals use, and it's called a risk tolerance tool. And it's pretty cool because it's a short quiz of sorts, right? But it's meant to gauge how risky of an individual you are when it comes to investing in where you want to put your money. And so for us, being 28, 29, just right around 30 years old, call it, the risk that we have and the tolerance for risk might be a little bit higher. Because we don't need to access our funds or all of our cash right away all the time. If you're 55 or 60 years old, your risk is probably very, very low because you're going to need to access the money sooner than later. And so I think about that with property value and buying and selling properties a lot because ultimately if you can make the mortgage payment and you can hold on to a property for 10, 15, 20 years, the value is most likely going to be substantially more than when you bought. So
to wrap up what you just said, then we're going to do our Saturday sampler, guys. Take advantage of your youth if you have it when it comes to investing in assets because you have time on your side. You can ride the waves. You can, like we said before, you can sort of ride through the hard times if things do come down, and eventually you can make the right play when things are back up because you've got time on your side. If you need to stomach, a downtrend for a few years, you can do that, right? Because you got time. So,
last thing, real quick. We were talking about in Texas, the stuff that's going on in California. We're talking about a lot of those bigger states. The amount of people, it's a mass exodus, right? The amount of people that are leaving California and some of the other states is a pretty shocking number. And if you look at Wisconsin and just the real estate that is available now versus what's going to be available in 5-10 years, I think Wisconsin specifically is going to have an unbelievable uptick in property value. So that's all I got for you.
So here's what we got today, guys, for beer. and I already rated it, but we'll just go through it again here. So it's Urge Tracker. It's a peanut butter cup flavored milk stout, and it's brewed by Carbon 4 Brewing out in Madison. But it's part of the Quick series over at Quick Trip. So believe it or not, Quick Trip is just such a force when it comes to like gas stations and convenience stores. They actually have a partnership with Carbon 4 where they have this Quick series beer brewed for them to sell exclusively in Quick Trip stores. And it's really cool because Mike and I are big, huge advocates of Quick Trip.
I think a lot of people love Quick Trip.
We love Quick Trip. I will skip
place.
other gas stations just to get to Quick Trip. And those take-home meals that they've got out now, guys, it's like $7 for these take-home meals. What a fantastic idea! You know,
We'll see you next time.
yeah, we'll see you next time.
This was packaged on February 1st, by the way. So this is like
very fresh. You can go get this at Quick Trip right now. I think all the Quick Trips have
peanut
it.
butter cup ice cream stout. I'm interested.
So what I think is really interesting and like just really comes to the
Super
forefront
good.
with the beer is the ice cream flavor is very pronounced, which is unique because I mean when you think of beer you don't think of ice cream, but they just really
It's impressive how
really
they do that.
nailed it. I'm sure that they put like lactose in there to get that, but I mean it actually does taste like a peanut butter cup ice cream.
It's pretty good. It's really good. I always go on a pass fail, which obviously this is a pass. This is kind of like a dessert beer for me. Like I wouldn't be able to have more than one.
I've had so many fantastic stouts, barrel aged stouts especially. I've had I think at this point over 3,000 unique beers in my lifetime. So I always like to rate things on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 being it's the worst beer ever, 100 it's the best beer I've ever tasted in my life. I feel bad because this is a very, very fantastic stout, and I think it's hard for me to give it like a super crazy score, but I think other people might give it a higher score if you haven't had as many crazy barrel-aged stouts as I have. I would say on a scale of 0 to 100, it's not quite in the 70s, which is why I'm going to settle on a 69 as the score. It's almost in the 70s. But that is a very, very good score, and I will say if I had not had like tons of barrel-aged stouts and stuff, I would probably rate this even higher. So highly recommend it. Really, really good beer.
Very good.
That's a great Saturday sampler. I think it's my favorite so far, maybe.
And I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up. I appreciate everybody doing in and giving us some feedback. We'll have a good topic for next week. We always take Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of early next week, and we take some feedback from clients, people who watch on stuff you guys want to hear about, and so we'll bring it to you as the ideas come in. But you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm Mike Flannery.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Austin Cole. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Talks. Keep it real.
Have a good one, guys.